Well, hello and welcome to the e-commerce podcast with me, your host, Matt Edmundson. Sorry about that. My voice went a little bit hoarse at the start, but welcome to the show. Hopefully it's going to carry on working. That's bizarre. It was working all right a minute ago. Anyway, this podcast is all about helping you deliver e-commerce wow. And to help us do just that, we're chatting with today's guest, Kristians Sikora from Aime Media, about maximizing Google Ads Performance Max and customer acquisition strategies. I mean, that's a heck of a topic, isn't it? And so we're going to get into all of that. Just turning my phone off. Now, before we jump into it, let me tell you, be like me, put your phone in Do Not Disturb before you hit the record button. We are going to let you know about the newsletter. Now, the newsletter is an awesome piece of kit. If you've not already subscribed, why not? If you're a regular to the show, you should be subscribed. If you're new to the show, check it out. Just go to ecommercepodcast.net, sign up to the newsletter, because each week, all of the tips, the strategies, the notes, the transcripts, they all come straight to your inbox. Don't even have to lift a finger. It's awesome. Now, this show is brought to you by the e-commerce cohort. The e-commerce cohort, if you don't know, is our monthly membership group where you get access to some amazing workshops around the topic of e-commerce from amazing people all over the world, many of whom have been amazing guests on this show. So do go check them out. This week we've got Claire Daniels. This month, next month, November, coming up, we've got Claire Daniels doing her workshop, which I'm super excited about, all about marketing. So you're not going to want to miss that. She was a great guest. So do come check that out. Prices start from just $14.99 a month, which is pretty low, really. So yeah, come and check it out. ecommercecohort.com. That's ecommercecohort.com. Right, that's the show sponsor. Let's talk about Kristians, an e-commerce wizard with a golden Google Ads touch. Love that. Turning 8-figure budgets into success stories across the globe. From boosting numerous under-the-radar brands to co-founding an agency that's rocked over 20 million in ad spend. Oh, it'd be nice to have 20 million to spend on ads in a lot of ways, wouldn't it? He's mastering the Google words. Now, Kristians is not just a strategist. He's the go-to guy for making e-commerce magic happen. Kristians, great to have you on the show. Loving your bio, man. The go-to guy for making e-commerce magic happen. No pressure there, then.
Yeah, that's probably the touch of one of my partners at the agency. So he loves popping me up, but yeah, that puts some some pressure, honestly.
It does a little bit.
It's always exciting to be the go-to guy or to make the strategy to build up that strategy and actually see it work. It's really frustrating or nervous at the beginning, but apparently it has paid off.
Very good. Well, you know, it sounds like it's paid off, which is awesome. I actually think your bio was rewritten by Sadaf, is what tends to happen. So you send your bio in and Sadaf normally goes, yeah, I'm just going to jazz that up a little bit, because she just does that with every single guest on all our podcasts. And 9 times out of 10, the guest sits there listening to me reading the bio going, I didn't write that. but it sounds really good. I'll take it. Yeah. And so the amount of requests we get for people from guests to say, could you just send us that bio so then it appears on their LinkedIn or whatever is quite interesting.
Actually, that would be nice, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So whereabouts in the world are you, sir?
So, I'm in Latvia.
Okay.
So, been basing mostly here. And then we're kind of doing our stuff all over the world. So one of our partners is also in Latvia. Other one is a nomad, traveling around. Spent some time in Amsterdam. Now he's in Lisbon. So it's always interesting how our kind of work together goes as well.
Yeah.
I'm here in Latvia.
It's interesting, isn't it, now, because the way the internet is and the way the world is, it doesn't really matter where you're from. Is a genuine response. Is like, actually, we have partners in Hungary. We have partners in trying to think. Do we have any in that? No, we have. We got partners in most of those old Baltic nations, you know, and it's wonderful because I really, one, it's just always nice to connect with people from different cultures who always
Yep.
interpret the world in a very different way to what I do, which is always quite helpful, I feel, because my worldview can be quite limited. But also, it's just really interesting how the world is a much smaller place. And, you know, you're based in Latvia, I'm in Liverpool right now. We're recording this over the web like we're next door to each other.
Yeah.
And it's the most remarkable thing. And I just love that. I love the fact that you've got a partner that's a digital nomad because, you know, if you're that phase of life, why would you not do that? Go and enjoy yourself a little bit, you know. And it's one of the more wonderful sides of technology, I find.
Yeah,
So
really
how did...
feels like everything is just that much closer and so much, that much reachable.
Yeah. No, as long as you've got a fast internet connection, the world is now at your feet, isn't it, really, in a lot of ways? So you're in Latvia, you've got this agency. How long have you been doing Google Ads?
So I started with Google Ads basically 4 years ago, a bit less.
Okay.
It was pretty sudden, to be honest. I was just asked at this company I was working for. I was a general marketing or junior marketing specialist, basically. And they asked me like, do I know Google Ads? I was like, yeah, sure I do. And just started jumping on calls, learning everything I could about it. And 6 months later, it already felt like I'm kind of, you know, in my comfort zone with, and I actually found the thing that I didn't know I was looking for. And gradually starting with that company, then further moving to an ecom agency, and then deciding with actually my friends to start our own agency.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, really these past kind of 3-4 years have moved really, really quickly.
Yeah. Yeah, as they do, because years in digital industries tend to be, I don't know if you have the same thing in Latvia. In the UK, we have things called dog years. And a year, and we call it a dog. It's like, apparently one dog year is like 7 normal years or something like that, you know.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, and so I think that applies to the digital sphere, doesn't it? Really, it's like 1 year in the digital world is the equivalent of 7 years outside it, sort of thing. And so if you've been involved with it for 4 years, that's actually quite a long time, which is why I often refer to myself as a dinosaur, because I've been involved with website design since the late 90s, and I've been in e-commerce since the early noughties. 2002 was my first e-com site. So hence the reason I'm a bit of a dinosaur, Kristians. But that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, that actually, I never thought about it that way, but that actually sounds really true, because for me, the 4 years feel really, really long. Like I basically know half of the stuff, or not most of the stuff about Google Ads, but then there are guys like who are doing this for 10, 15, 20 years basically. And I just can't imagine the knowledge that they have and how they feel about this.
Yeah, but it's interesting, isn't it? Because you see, I knew a lot about Google Ads, say 10 years ago when we did it in-house in our e-com businesses. But the reality of it is, Google Ads 10 years ago are very, very different to Google Ads right now. And actually, some of my old thinking is unhelpful because I'm tethered to a way a system used to be rather than the way the system actually is. And Google is one of those companies that is constantly reinventing everything, isn't it? And constantly changing the rules. So how do you stay on top of it all? How do you keep up to date? You know, what are some of the tips and tricks you've got for making sure you know what's going on?
So there are masterminds that you can be a part of that actually cost something, but they are great value. But the best value I think you can get is actually from podcasts and LinkedIn. There are hundreds of really awesome Google Media buyers that are posting amazing value on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
But here in like Europe, in UK as well, a lot, I know like 3 guys that I'm following myself, US as well. We try to do that as well, kind of give free value, tips, recommendations, anything that can actually kind of the thinking now around Google is that Google is trying to maybe push and take your money. So the easiest value becomes the things that you can do to actually save your money and leverage it in the most efficient way. So yeah, just following people on LinkedIn, reading their basically daily content is an amazing way to learn and up your game, even if you're just at the very beginning, because the tips range from the most basic stuff to some really high level stuff. But
Yeah.
I would say that's the best way, place to get the
Yeah.
value.
No, I totally get that. Totally true. LinkedIn is a gold mine of information in a lot of ways. And to be fair, part of me was expecting you to say Twitter, or X as it's now called, isn't it? It's not called Twitter anymore. I must stop there. But yeah, do you do the Twitter thing or not really? Just LinkedIn?
Yeah, I actually wanted to kind of follow that up with the Twitter topic. Is we did actually, or I did actually find value there previously, but then it just got too crowded for me. So I actually find that LinkedIn with the longer form posts kind of makes it, I don't know, more easily digestible for my brain at least. And,
Yeah.
yeah, maybe Twitter is a bit too crowded, or X is a bit too crowded.
Yeah, there's a lot of noise, isn't
I
there?
like it.
Yeah, that's the problem, isn't it? It's like, how do you find the people that you definitely want to hear and sort of filter out the noise? There's a lot of noise, I think, on social media, which is again, makes me sound a little bit old, doesn't it, I suppose? So here you are in Google. What are some of the things that we then should be thinking about right now as e-commerce entrepreneurs? I totally lost the ability to speak for a minute, but as business owners, as entrepreneurs, people running e-commerce websites, what are some of the things that we should be thinking about where Google Ads is concerned right now?
I'd probably say if you're an e-com brand running Google Ads, the first place you have to kind of think about and look is, or actually, I would say two most important pitfalls that I've seen over the accounts is the conversion tracking itself, and then a lot of people tend to rely on PMAX too much. So I would say that's kind of maybe a worrying part, actually, because it can get out of hand, especially with faulty conversion tracking. So yeah, I think I'll probably try to address the points one by one.
Yeah, let's dig into those because, let's start with conversion tracking. First and foremost, let's not assume that everybody knows what that means. What do you mean by conversion tracking? And then let's dig into why we're not getting this right.
Yeah, so essentially the easiest example that I found people understand is it's the Facebook pixel, but for Google. So it's the tracking code or the tracking parameters that you install in your website that help you understand and Google understand how many of those clicks resulted in sales and what were the amount of the purchases, and also really important if you want to do remarketing. So dynamic remarketing, filter out your existing customers from new customers, separate that so you don't overbid on existing customers. And what we see, and I think a big issue, is that one, people try to do it themselves, or two, people try to do it with Google's support, but even their kind of recommendations and steps differ from each other, and usually they don't check whether everything's installed correctly. So what usually tends to happen is that you have multiple purchase conversion actions running as primary at the same time, meaning that one sale will be counted as 2, 3, 4 sales, giving false data to the algorithm. Then also having, add to carts, page view, even phone calls as primary conversion kind of goals. So that means whenever someone, that basically kind of what I think is giving Google the signal that a phone call or a page view is just as important as a purchase to your e-com brand, which is what you don't want to do. So it also gets tricky because then if you don't know your conversion tracking, you might go to your kind of campaigns to see the performance and see, oh, I'm doing like 20x ROAS, while it's actually being counted the conversion value of a page view or add to cart, not the purchase itself. So that's how you can really, really lose your way, like right at the beginning as you start running Google ads, is just seeing one number on Google thinking it's true while you're not seeing the same thing on your yeah, in your bank account basically.
Which, to be honest with you, I mean, it comes up time and time again, and I think it comes up time and time again because the problem, in a lot of ways, is still not solved. There is always a discrepancy between what Google tells you and what you think is true based on the numbers that you see on your website. And so, trying to get more and more accurate data becomes this sort of the holy grail, doesn't it, that we sort of almost chase after. It's like, how do we get perfect attribution? How do we get perfect numbers out of Google? I still don't know if there's an answer. But some of the things that you said strike me as quite interesting, that actually we can inadvertently set up the tracking, the conversion tracking on the Google site in a way that's maybe not helpful.
Yeah.
So how is this something you see a lot of people doing?
Yeah, yeah, a lot actually. I think, and just disclaimer, I don't know how to do conversion tracking myself. That's my colleague, my partner at our agency. He's the one who's mastered conversion tracking, and it's really a kind of a specific thing to master. So one is like Google Ad strategy, and one is conversion tracking on itself. So that's why I can understand why people get it wrong. Um, but yeah, sorry, I forgot the initial question.
Yeah, no problem. I'm curious if you see a lot of people making this mistake, and I think a lot of
Oh yeah,
people listening will be going, it's interesting what you've just said. What are some of the things? I mean, I appreciate your partner does it. Hopefully, you've picked up one or two things. But what are some of the things that we should be aware of? How can we check it ourselves? How do we know if we've got conversion tracking wrong?
okay, yeah. So actually, out of all of the audits I've done this year, I think only 2 accounts had the conversion tracking correctly. The best way to ensure that you have set it up correctly is through using Google Tag Manager. That's probably the most accurate data you'll be able to get. But the first thing you can do to check it is just go under settings, under conversions, and if you have more than one action basically set as primary, then something's probably not being counted right, or it's being counted multiple times.
Yeah.
So under the first tab or first table that is you're seeing purchase actions, you should only have one action set as primary, and that should probably be connected with server-side tracking or like direct website tracking. And then if you move further in the settings tab, then you should see only all of the remaining actions as secondary. So add to cart, secondary action, not being counted into the overall accounts performance, page views, leads, directions, if you have those as well. Everything should be set as secondary. I would probably, if you're an e-com brand, delete the kind of phone calls and lead any lead related conversion actions from the account. So leave add to cart, leave page view as secondary actions. But yeah, then just have the best way is to check if you have only one primary conversion action, which is purchase.
Yeah.
I would say there are steps or there are strategies where you can maybe trick your ad account if it's completely fairly new, where you are using an add to cart action as a primary one. But for the majority of cases, I would say just leave it for purchase, primary conversion, and that should be kind of the first maybe step to success with conversion tracking. And I actually liked what you said before, that it is this kind of topic that no one knows if we ever will get it right. Even now, like the cookie of Google is not not able to track all of the conversions. So there's still discrepancy of what Google is showing you and what the actual kind of impact of Google Ads is to your business. Usually I've seen, if you're using apps like Triple Whale or Nordbeam, which are third-party attribution tools, is where you can see more accurate data. And using those apps, you can actually see that there's usually a 20-40% discrepancy from what you're seeing on Google and what you're actually getting. So you're actually getting much better performance than what Google is showing you with kind of the conversion tracking there. And it is, I can even say how important it is to get it right, because Google is essentially a smart bidding, is the smartest algorithm for any paid channel. And if you feed it bad data, your outcome is going to be bad as well. So it relies on that data, it relies on the quality of that data. So that's kind of really the foundation of everything, because once you start reading it that one sale is actually worth four sales, then it will start thinking that, I can bid more to get that one sale, and then you find yourself in a situation where your metrics are just in the ground.
No, very, very good key information there. And so go away and check it's interesting, actually. One of the things that I do, Kristians, when I go and see clients, so I do a bit of e-com coaching with people, and it's something I quite enjoy. One of the questions that I like to ask clients whenever I sit down with them for the first time is I ask them, what's the primary purpose of your website? And everyone looks at you like you talking crazy talk, because it's like, what do you mean? That it's an e-commerce site? And I'm like, yes, but is the primary purpose of your website to sell product? Yes or no? Because the amount of e-commerce websites who will say that, but actually the rest of their site is not geared towards that, is quite extraordinary, right?
Yeah.
And so, but we agree 99% of the time for most e-commerce websites, the primary purpose of that website is to sell stuff. Okay. Yeah. So we write that on the board, primary purpose to sell stuff. And this ties in with what you're telling Google, really. Your primary conversion tracking is a purchase. Interestingly, that Google want you to put in secondary, because one of the questions that I follow up with is, what's the secondary purpose of your website? And it's one of the questions I've been asking for years. And it throws people, because it's like, well, I just want to sell stuff. And I'm like, but what happens to the people that come to your website that don't want to buy your stuff? They're not ready for whatever reason to buy the stuff. If you exist just to sell them stuff, if that's your primary purpose, how are you engaging with them? And I think that all comes down to your secondary purpose. And for me, again, not true necessarily all of the time, but for most e-commerce websites, most of the time, the secondary purpose of that website is to get the email addresses of highly relevant traffic, right? So using lead magnets, freebies, whatever mechanism, makes sense for your site and for your brand. The key aim has got to be to get the email address of the person that's come to your website, and then put them into some kind of email sequence or funnel that eventually will hopefully lead to a purchase. You build a relationship with them over time. So if you can't get the sale, can you get the email address? Yes or no? And it's a remarkable, it's a very simplistic way of thinking about your website, right? But if they're your two primary, your primary is purchase, your secondary is to get the email address, it changes, I think, quite a bit how you do your website, and it changes quite a bit how you do Google, I think, Google Shopping. And what's fascinating to me in this conversation is that actually if I've heard you right, setting the secondary purpose on Google as lead generation or getting someone's email address is not something that you would necessarily advise.
Yeah, because really, email for Google doesn't tie in with purchases. If you want to do like lead gen phone calls and try to get that email address, those would be for lead gen kind of accounts and lead gen businesses, or B2B basically. That's kind of for Google lead gen or phone calls, that's tied with the campaigns that are already created towards lead gen as well. So And I'm saying, yeah, secondary action, because basically you don't have more options to choose from. So it's either primary and it's getting used as the northern star for your account, and it's counting the conversion value, or secondary, which is basically you can observe the kind of values that are going through those actions, like add to carts, and see maybe how many add to carts like Google got versus the percentage of purchases it got. So, but that's yeah the as a secondary option,
Yeah, yeah.
basically.
No, fair enough. Fair enough. Fascinating. So the first thing you said was conversion tracking.
Yeah,
And then the second thing you said was relying on Max too much.
yeah, on Performance Max, because it's basically, I think the Google Media buyers around the world are either move away from PMax completely or have PMax in your account still. Because I've seen accounts where PMax has done great things, but there are far more many accounts where I've seen it drain your money, especially when it goes to that plus 10, 20, 30K a month level. That PMax can do fairly good job on shopping and search campaigns, even if there's a little bit brand in it. But once you try to scale it past a certain point where it cannot meet the demand with shopping and search, then it just starts cannibalizing your own other paid media channels. So either your also organic traffic, or the traffic that would have gotten to your site and made the purchase from Meta ads or TikTok. And yeah, PMax just kind of swoops in, says thank you for the sale. I'm gonna accredit it to myself for showing, I don't know, a display ad maybe, or a video ad that doesn't have a click on it, but because of engaged view, it will say thank you for the sale. This one is all all Google, and that's why you probably see oftentimes like crazy ROASes on your PMax campaigns. One thing is that you have a lot of branded terms there, which should have gone to your brand search, or maybe
Yeah.
even your organic listings or rankings, and then it's just over attributing or cannibalizing on your other traffic channels. So there's really, because PMax is such a black box, it's difficult to tell where you are getting these sales, but that's why it's important to look at your overall kind of business numbers, and look at your marketing efficiency ratio. Maybe try to pinpoint that moment in time when you started, I don't know, scaling PMax, and look whether your revenue actually grew with that PMax, because Google will show that you started running PMax from, I don't know, $200 a day to $1,000 a day. It will show you're still keeping up with 4x 5x ROAS, but then you look at your backend numbers and see that nothing actually changed. So that's when you have those first signals that you have to look deeper into it, because Google might be just stealing your Facebook or Meta traffic, or your organic traffic, and kind of wanting you to spend more on Google, showing you great numbers, but you're actually just losing money on those sales, because you would have gotten them for free most of the times, or
Yeah.
for better cost.
So how do we mitigate that?
So first thing, probably if you're running a high scale or even some sort of PMax campaign, it doesn't mean that it's necessarily true for you. You have to do your own research. Basically, look at all of your channels, look at your MER, or media efficiency ratio, see whether that really might be the case. Look at like insights within PMax, how much is branded in there, how many conversions are you getting from your shopping campaigns. So those you can find under listing groups and products. Uh, yeah, and see whether that might be true for you. If you have yeah, if you have a feeling that it might be the case, start lowering your PMAX spends and see whether that affects your top line. If it does, then yeah, then maybe PMAX is actually doing something good for you, and you can explore kind of pushing more into it. But what most of the times we see is, yeah, with decreasing or even shutting PMAX off completely, the top line doesn't really change that much.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that can be actually um, kind of managed much more efficiently with using the good old reliable standard shopping campaigns. If you're an ecom brand, that's
Mm-hmm.
probably the best way for you to grow actually past that certain point that actually PMAX could. So PMAX basically becomes a problem at scale.
Fascinating. Fascinating. So actually, the old standard, I like what you called it, the standard shopping campaign, is actually still, should still be part of your
Yeah,
arsenal, your strategy, even in the light of things like Performance Max and all the sort of the newfangled things that are coming forward.
yeah, because it just gives you much more control. You actually have control over those search terms. I know Google is pushing out a lot of new features for PMAX as well, but it's still not that, yeah, manageable. It still feels like a black box. So, and you can still start or leverage your kind of the smart bidding algorithm for standard shopping as well, because that's kind of one of the best strategies moving forward, is not using manual CPC with standard shopping, but actually use a TROAS strategy with standard shopping. And
Sorry, Christians. There's a lot of terminology there, and I'm aware that
I
people
apologize.
listening to no.
Yeah,
I'm aware that we have different people listening to the show, and some people just starting out, some people like me maybe have been around a little while. So just explain some of the different terminology that you've used, and then let's dig into it.
yeah. So one of probably the most used strategies with standard shopping previously was using manual CPC or manual cost per click, where you tell Google how much you are willing to pay for that click,
Yeah.
and it will find you sales, or not sales, clicks, set you into bidding actions
Mm-hmm.
where you will not pay more than that click, that bid. Um, so it's more of a manual setup, and
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't really maybe take into account how um, purchase intent that click is, if that
Yeah.
makes sense, like how warm that user might be to actually wanting to purchase, or whether that's someone who's just googling random products trying
Yeah.
to find more about them, or find images or whatever.
Yeah.
So now the idea is actually to leverage that smart bidding algorithm that
Mm-hmm.
Google has, that, why it's so important actually to or give all of your best data to it, because it can make this decisions on showing the ads, shopping ads, to people who are more likely to convert, basically those who have shown a history in Google's opinion that, yeah, they might buy something.
Yeah.
So you leverage that and move to a target ROAS strategy, where you basically already, it's essential for you to know your cost as well. It will not work in a way where you set up 4x or 400% target ROAS, and €1,000 a day ad spend, and you'll suddenly start making 40,000 a day. Uh, yeah, Google will probably tell you that it is not able to spend your money at that
Mm.
at that pace. But where it does become helpful is knowing your numbers and knowing that Google will probably under attribute the conversion value, the sales that it can get its hands on. And so let's say you know that a 2x ROAS works for you.
Mm-hmm.
There's like a 20-25% discrepancy from what Google is showing you to what you're actually seeing in the back end in your top line, and then adjusting that. So let's say running your standard shopping at 150%, so 1.5x ROAS, but that 2x ROAS would suffice for you, and
Mm-hmm.
that in real life that 1.5 on Google is actually closer to 2 or above 2x ROAS in real
Yeah.
life. And that's where you can start kind of playing with those smart bidding algorithms and strategies. So I know cases where people are actually spending, 4 or 5 figures a day on shopping with a target ROAS goal of 0.5 or 50% basically, and still that is profitable for them, and that's actually scaling the brand, the account, not just Google wise, but the brand itself as well, because it just gives that visibility around the shopping network. It
Yeah.
puts you in first place. It lets you compete in the bidding actions with your competitors. Plus it's kind of saying Google that I still need to make, I still need to find those, I still need for you to find those people that are more likely to convert, as opposed to showing the ad to everyone. So probably Google is gonna adjust its bids then to bid a bit more on people that have shown a purchase history
Yeah.
previously,
Yeah.
and bid less to someone that might not result in a conversion. So that's kind of one of the, I would say, most popular kind of advanced strategies going around there. Is actually, giving Google the opportunity to use smart bidding,
Yeah.
and knowing your numbers, still limiting it in a way, um, but kind of trying to make the most of it, and actually having control over it, adding your negative keywords all the time, and yeah, working your way kind of from there.
Okay. So the smart bidding strategy that you just talked about, which makes a lot of sense in my head. I mean, and it's nice that technology is getting to a place where you can look at the numbers and go, right, actually, guys, what I'm after is I'm after a ROAS. If we can hit this target ROAS number, the return on ad spend. In other words, for every dollar that I spend on advertising, or every pound I spend on advertising with you, I need to generate £2 or $2 in revenue. That would be a 2 times ROAS. Very oversimplified, but in essence, that's what we're saying. And so we're saying, right, the product that I'm selling, in effect, if I hit a 2 times ROAS, I know I'm breaking even on the first sale. If you're sending me people with good buyer's intent, I'm okay, because they'll buy from me a second time, a third time, or whatever the strategy is that you've set. And so now we're getting to a stage where we can tell Google, actually, this is a kind, because before, like you say, you'd manually have to do it. Are we near my ROAS numbers? Yes or no? Turn that one off, switch that one, ramp that one up, kind of a thing. And so we would spend hours doing that, really, wouldn't you, in Google AdWords? Now it's all this sort of smart. And I like how you can tell Google, and Google will think, well, let's increase the bids then to get those types of people to your website. You said something which was a bit of a throwaway comment that I want to sort of come back to, about therefore sharing the data with Google. What did you mean by that?
So again, it comes down to conversion tracking and giving Google the best data. So one is obviously the data that's coming from Google, but also uploading your customer list. So if, for example, you have uh, an epic history in Facebook ads, or customers that have come, from Meta ads, from other channels, and you're just starting off with Google, or Google has been the smaller player in your whole kind of media mix, uploading your customer lists might help the algorithm as well. So one, it can be used for exclusions. So Google knows that these X amount of customers have already bought from you. Google just doesn't know about it. So you can start matching them and excluding them from your top of funnel campaigns. And then I do feel like that also, if you give Google enough data, that also helps the algorithm to kind of look for what it should target, kind of giving the history. And but yeah, it mostly is tied to the data that you're feeding Google. So again, don't give it the idea that one purchase is worth 3 purchases if you have 3 primary conversion actions running at the same time. So that's just make sure your conversion tracking, because everything else goes from there. So
if you were, there's a lot there, Kristians. Thank you for your insight on it. I'm really curious by it. There's a lot there to think about. I mean, in some respects, what you talked about is I like it because it's quite straightforward and simple. It's not, convoluted, which is quite helpful. But it makes the assumption that you've got existing data. What happens if you are just starting out? You're starting an e-com business. How does your strategy for Google Ads then change? I'm new to Google Ads. I've got a new business. I've not really got any sales data of any history of any kind. I'm selling a widget. I know Google Ads is going to be part of that campaign. What's the best place to sort of start with something like that?
I actually found from my experience that Google should be an add-on channel at some time further down the line,
Okay.
not the channel that you actually start with. There obviously are some exclusions to that, but generally for ecom brands, I found that being the case, that usually Meta and Meta is the primary one. And even when we have gotten our accounts up to a scale, usually the split is still like 60-40, 70-30, where Meta is the biggest spender. And just if you're starting out, I would probably say give your marketing spend to Meta first, and then start kind of integrating Google in the picture as well. And if you do start with a completely fresh account, then I would say, run a standard shopping campaign. First, go with manual CPC, because you don't have the data to start running a target ROAS or leveraging any smart bidding strategies. Do create a brand search campaign as well. I'm not a fan of them, or I'm not a fan of them at scale, because I think that's a big pain point for Google as well, and other agencies or other freelancers running Google Ads is telling you that your brand search is basically your Google Ads, and your return on brand search is your Google Ads. But for a fresh account to start running a brand search campaign, it can get you those first conversions in, those first kind of data points in. So it's a slow process, but it will help. To just give Google some sort of an idea of how your customer looks like, even if they came in through a branded search campaign. But the first campaign is probably standard shopping, manual CPC, and that's probably the first part of running a campaign. Even before running a campaign, there's probably tons to do with your product feed optimization within your Google Merchant Center account. So that's another beast completely. But that's probably just as important as conversion tracking before you start running anything.
I mean, the shopping feed optimization is something that we seem to be constantly tweaking with our stuff on Google. I'm intrigued though why you would say, if you're new, if you're established. I liked what you said. Then your Meta Google split should be around 60-40, maybe 70-30. I'm curious as to why, if you're starting out, you would focus the majority, if not all of that budget onto something like Meta. Why not Google straight away?
Even though Google is search intent based, and even with shopping campaigns, you get to put your product out there with all of the competitors. So you can, they can compare the prices, they can compare reviews, images, like how the product looks itself before they make a decision to click. But there's probably been already some sort of kind of awareness generated, like for that product itself. And when someone goes looking for a product, they see, your brand and brand A and brand B. It might be the case that they click on a competitor just because they've seen them on Facebook and they have some sort of already brand recognition with them. Because you're still fresh, you're still new, you're showing up there, but they just don't know you, and they might have seen, one or two Facebook ads from a competitor. So that's where the click goes as well. that's probably where Google and Facebook really ties together, is that Facebook is amazing for brand awareness, visibility,
Yeah.
and just building that kind of trust already with the product itself. So yeah, in most cases, Google's success is really tied into Facebook's success.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, it's quite an interesting viewpoint. One that I've heard before, actually, and certainly the balance of ad spend. We've talked a lot about that in the past, but I think it's interesting. If you are starting out, Meta over Google is a probably good place to start. What do you think, dear listener? Agree or disagree? I'm curious to know. Right, Kristians, listen, I've totally enjoyed the conversation, man. Lots of notes, as always. But I'm also aware of time, so I probably should bring this to a close. If people want to reach out to you, if they want to connect with you, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, you can connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm posting there a lot, even if you just want to follow for the content. I'm trying to do more posts lately. Yeah, you can connect. I don't know if they probably see my name somewhere, so they can find me on LinkedIn, or go to aimemedia.com. And yeah, you should find a Calendly button there to jump on a call with us. Yeah, we even we know that kind of getting starting to work with an agency is a tough commitment. It's a tough decision. So even if you just want to have a free audit, we do that as well. Recommendations, everything. No strings attached. So that's how we really want to give value first to anyone out there, because there's really a lot of ways for you to lose money on Google and not do the right thing. So we just, our priority is to make everyone happy, and if it leads to something, then but yeah, probably I would say LinkedIn then. Probably that was a longer answer than
No, that's fine. LinkedIn. We will, of course, link to your LinkedIn profile in the show notes.
So that's
Yeah, we'll put those in the show notes. So if you're listening on a podcast, just go to the show notes on the app. You'll find the link there. If you're watching on YouTube, we'll put the link in the description. And of course, if you've signed up to the newsletter, it'll just be in the email. Just click the link in the email. It's very, very simple. But that's aimemedia.com. I pronounced it wrong. So it's not Aime, it's Aime, A-I-M-E media.com.
Yeah, so there are different ways to pronounce it. we honestly haven't settled on one way ourselves.
we just keep changing. I have a company called Aurion, A-U-R-I-O-N. And that's actually the group, the company's group is Aurion. Everything comes under Aurion, and the amount of times people will say it's Matt from Orion. It's just no one knows how to pronounce it. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing it right, so I'm with you. I just call it Aurion. Just sound really confident.
Yeah.
But of course, we will have all of that, like I say, in the show notes. Listen, Kristians, thank you so much for coming on to the show, man. Genuinely love the conversation. Really, really appreciate it, and I hope you have a tremendous success with your agency and with what you're doing with ads. I'll follow you on LinkedIn. I'm going to learn a lot, no doubt. But yeah, thanks, man. Really appreciate it.
Pleasure being here, Matt. Amazing podcast experience.
That's good. Wow, that's always helpful.
Yeah.
Keeps people coming back. What a great conversation. Huge thanks again to Kristians for joining me today. Also, big shout out to today's show sponsor, the incredible e-commerce cohort. I appreciate incredible. I'm involved, hence it's incredible. Sounds a bit arrogant. Anyway, but remember to check them out at ecommercecohort.com. That's the group, the membership, the mastermind, whatever you want to call it. We're all in there every month. Come join us. Be sure to follow the e-commerce podcast wherever you get your podcast from, because we've got yet more great conversations lined up. I don't want you to miss any of them at all. No, not at all. And in case no one has told you yet today, let me be the first. You are awesome. Yes, you are. Created awesome. It's just a burden you have to bear. Kristians has to bear it. I've got to bear it. you've got to bear it as well. Now, the e-commerce podcast is produced by Aime Media. You can find our entire archive of episodes on your favorite podcast app. The team that makes this show possible is the wonderful, beautiful, and talented Sadaf Bainon, and equally beautiful, talented Tanya Hertzlak. Our theme song was written by Josh Edmundson. And as I mentioned, if you'd like to read the transcript or show notes, head over to the website ecommercepodcast.net, where incidentally you can sign up for the newsletter, which I've mentioned if you haven't done so already. So that's it from me. That's it from Kristians. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a fantastic week wherever you are in the world. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.